Order.
Call Derek Ball.
Thank you, sir. I rise on behalf of New Zealand First to speak on the Child Protection Child Sex Offender Register Bill, and New Zealand First will be supporting this bill through to Select Committee. We do, however, have some concerns, questions and queries that hopefully will be addressed at the Select Committee. A few of them have already been mentioned, and what I did, sir, was I went through the departmental disclosure statement and regulatory impact statement, and a lot of those questions fell out of there. So I'll take this opportunity to go through those questions and queries in those documents here. The main reason why, in fact, I'll start with the disclosure statement and the general policy statement, and the main reason why New Zealand First is supporting this bill is actually quite aptly noted here, and I quote, it says that information sharing between relevant agencies is recognised as an effective way to minimise the harm from reoffending by non-child sex offenders, when complemented by a structured risk management framework. Child sex offender registers help government agencies identify and manage the risk of sex offending in the community and provide offenders with incentives and support to maintain low-risk lifestyle. So that's a good paragraph about the basis of why New Zealand First does support this bill. But what is this legislation trying to affect? And what I saw in the regulatory impact statement was actually quite concerning, and I know that the Minister actually mentioned it in her first speech, but kind of brushed over it. It states that the potential for child sexual reoffending arises when convicted sex offenders are living in the community. Each year, around 210 of these offenders are released back into the community, and approximately 115 child sex offenders per year commence a community-based sentence. The majority of these offenders have no ongoing contact with justice sector agencies after their sentence, even though they may present a significant risk of future harm. So when I read that, sir, I said, what's going on here? This can't be a new problem that's occurring. So we've got the information out there that we've got over 100 child sex offenders in the community that pose a significant risk of future harm, and there is no contact with our agencies at this stage. And that is obviously why we need to have something like the Child Sex Offender Register. But obviously there's a significant problem currently, and it has been for a long time. Given that information, sir, it is no wonder why there has been a 20% increase over the last couple of years. In the executive summary, sir, it states that 1,819 sex offences against children occurred, up by over 20%. But I don't see anywhere in any of these documents where it actually addresses the recidivist rate or the reoffending rate. So this obviously is the target for the register. And I went and did a little bit of research, and with the sexual reoffending rate, after the 12-month follow-up, it's in and around the 10%, sir, and after 24 months, it actually jumps up to about 17%. So there is a really big problem, and this goes some way to addressing that problem. Obviously, child victims of sexual abuse are amongst the most vulnerable victims, and that's why the general public know that this is a different type of criminal, it's a different type of crime, and that's why we need a different method to be able to deal with that, and the register is that, sir. But it also occurs, what also needs to occur is wraparound services and the other services that will support and integrate with the framework, with the register. And I noticed that in the Bill's Digest it suggests that there is a framework of risk minimisation that will support the register, but it doesn't go on to detail what that framework is. So it'll be, again, interesting to find out what exactly that framework is that will support the register. And I think it's a key thing to note that this isn't going to stop child abuse in itself. This targets the reoffending or the reoffenders of child abuse. So we need other methods to help prevent child abuse, and Carmel Cipollone actually mentioned one of them, which was a bill that's going to come up tomorrow, which is the mandatory registration of social workers bill. That's one of the prime examples of why we can't look at the register as a silver bullet. There were a few options that were considered going through and coming up with the Child Protection Offender Register, and it highlights the importance of what the considerations were in ending up at this stage. There was obviously maintaining the status quo, extending the scope of the existing child sex offender harm reduction measures, and also increasing funding for NGOs to increase the provision of specialist assessments. All of those had limitations in themselves, sir, being some that were voluntary to the status quo not working, so we need to find a different mechanism. That's why New Zealand First is supporting this bill, sir. It actually took until the 6th speech today from the Green Party to actually start mentioning the funding and where the resources will be coming from. And when I was reading that, I was quite surprised at where this funding was actually going to come from, sir. So it says here that the 10-year cost for this proposal is around 150 million. And it states that some capital components and all field operating costs for the register and risk management framework amounting to $85 million, be there corrections, police and the courts, over 10 years, will be met from within existing baselines. So there, for $85 million of the $150 million, it's going to be met from existing baselines. So, and it goes on to say the additional $9.1 million in regards to corrections will be absorbed by corrections through efficiency gains. So what that means is, in other words, is tough luck, suck it up and do the job. They won't get any more funding to do more work, sir. In regards to the police will absorb the cost of its new activity through achieving more effective utilisation of existing staff. More effective utilisation of existing staff. That means wearing more hats, more jobs, and no extra help, no extra staffing, and no extra funding to make this happen. What that says to me, sir, actually is that this could end up being yet another public service that is being stretched and stretching to breaking point. And actually I was looking at a study that was done, sir, by the Australian New Zealand Journal of Criminology. And under one of the headings, it was the impact of community notification on criminal justice agencies. A small, and I just want to quote this, sir, a small but growing body of research demonstrates that community notification has a significant impact on the agencies responsible for its administration. One of the most frequently cited concerns of administrators is that it places a strain on limited agency resources. Community notification schemes are undeniably expensive to implement and maintain, irrespective of whether they are active or passive. The time and money invested in activities associated with notification inevitably must be redirected from other areas, which could plausibly lead to an increase in other types of crime. So there is a lot of detail that has been somewhat brushed over, sir, in the presentation of this bill, and I think one that was kind of swept under the carpet a little bit and not mentioned by anyone in the National Party yet, apart from or not even the Minister, was where the funds are coming from. And in the end, it's going to unfortunately be placed on the police, corrections and the courts to find a way to make that happen. And what we don't want to see is the potential for this register to do a good job be squandered by lack of resources once again from the government. So, like I said, New Zealand First is going to support this bill. I went through very few questions and queries and problems and concerns that we had. I had a heap more to go through, but that will be coming through in the Select Committee. New Zealand First supports this bill through Select Committee, sir.